Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the channel where we break down the biggest stories in global politics and economics. Today, we're taking a deep dive into a fascinating development out of Japan. The Constitutional Democratic Party, or CDP, which is the main opposition party in Japan, has just announced a massive economic stimulus package worth 8.9 trillion yen. That's roughly equivalent to about 58 billion US dollars, give or take, depending on the exchange rate. This package includes some really eye-catching measures: a zero consumption tax on food, strengthened efforts to combat bear attacks, and direct cash payments to citizens. Now, at first glance, this might sound like an eclectic mix of policies, but when you start peeling back the layers, it actually makes a lot of sense in the context of Japan's current challenges. So let's unpack this step by step, starting with a broader economic picture and then zooming in on each component. First off, why is the CDP proposing this now? Japan has been grappling with a sluggish economy for years, exacerbated by factors like an aging population, low consumer spending, and persistent deflationary pressures. But in recent times, things have shifted a bit. Inflation has started to creep up, partly due to global supply chain disruptions and rising energy costs, and that's hitting households hard. The ruling Liberal Democratic Party has been in power for most of the post-war era, but they've faced criticism for not doing enough to address these pocketbook issues. The CDP, led by figures like Yoshihiko Noda, sees an opportunity here to position themselves as the party of bold action. This stimulus announcement comes at a time when public approval for the government is waning, especially after recent elections where economic concerns were front and center. By floating this 8.9 trillion yen plan, the CDP is essentially saying, look, we're ready to spend big to get Japan back on track, and we're targeting the areas that matter most to ordinary people. Let's start with the headline grabber: zero consumption tax on food. Currently, Japan's consumption tax stands at 10% on most goods, including food, though there's a reduced rate of 8% on some essentials. The CDP wants to drop that to zero for food items, at least temporarily, as a way to ease the burden on families amid rising prices. This isn't entirely new for them. Back in April 2025, they pledged something similar for a one-year period, but now it's baked into this larger stimulus framework. Economically, this could inject a significant boost into consumer spending. Food makes up a big chunk of household budgets, especially for lower-income families, so removing the tax could put more money back into people's pockets immediately. Critics might argue that this could lead to a revenue shortfall for the government, estimated at around 2 to 3 trillion yen annually, but the CDP counters that the increased spending would stimulate growth and ultimately help balance the books through higher economic activity. It's a classic Keynesian approach: spend now to grow later. And in Japan's context, where deflation has been a bogeyman for decades, encouraging consumption is key. Imagine going to the supermarket and not paying that extra 10% on rice, vegetables, or fish. It could make a real difference for pensioners or young families struggling with stagnant wages. Now moving on to something that might seem a bit out of left field: strengthened measures to combat bear attacks. Yes, you heard that right. Bear attacks have become a surprisingly pressing issue in Japan, particularly in rural areas like Hokkaido and the northern prefectures. In 2025 alone, there have been reports of over a dozen fatalities from bear encounters, the highest in years. This surge is attributed to factors like climate change, pushing bears closer to human settlements, a decline in the number of hunters due to an aging population, and even changes in forest management. The government has already deployed military units in places like Akita to help with trapping and culling, but the CDP wants to go further. Their plan includes allocating funds for more advanced monitoring systems like drones and AI-powered cameras to track bear movements, training programs for local communities on prevention, and subsidies for bear-proof infrastructure, such as reinforced garbage bins and electric fences around farms. Why include this in an economic stimulus? Well, it's clever politics. Rural voters, who often feel neglected by Tokyo-centric policies, are a key demographic. Bear attacks disrupt agriculture, tourism, and local economies. Farms get raided, people get injured or worse, and it scares off visitors. By framing this as part of the stimulus, the CDP is addressing public safety while stimulating jobs in rural areas through these new programs. It could create employment in wildlife management, technology, and construction, all while making communities safer. It's a nod to the fact that economic health isn't just about GDP numbers, it's about quality of life, especially in depopulating regions. And then we have the cash payments, which are perhaps the most straightforward element of the package. The CDP